You know, it feels weird going back to doing YouTube because I know I've been gone for a while, but I don't know. I just got this urge, so here I am. Today I'm going to be talking about FNAF, which I know is really inaccessible to a lot of people because even I feel that way. I've become a FNAF fan over the past week, and there's people like MatPat and like all these other YouTubers. They have these theories, and like there's like 4 different timelines, I think, and it's all super confusing. And what we're going to be talking about today can narrow that down. Even though it's not actually canon, it's accessible to new people, and I really enjoy it. Well, it's part of a greater franchise of books like that. So today, I'm going to be giving my review on The Fourth Closet. This is a graphic novel written by Scott Cawthon and illustrated by Diana Cameron. So we're gonna structure this based on art, and then it's going to be story, and then character. So this is a topic I'm really interested to talk about, so let's get right into that. I'd like to start this off by saying that in no way am I an artist, so I can't give a fair and objective critique of this artwork. But I think that as a fan, it's important that I give my views on this because it is a visualization of a previous book in this series, so it's important. I'd like to start off by saying that like the art is not bad. In no way is the art bad, but there is an issue with how the people look. I think the way the people are drawn is it's inhuman. It's like maybe too cartoonish, because I know that FNAF over the years it has become a very children a children full fandom, so it's kind of geared towards them. But oftentimes it'll give me almost Scooby-Doo vibes, which isn't quite a good thing for what this is going for. And I can criticize like how the humans look, because they're pretty boring. Like, they're drawn well, but they're pretty boring looking, and there's not much to really care about. And then you turn around and you have these animatronics, which they're super cool, they're super badass. It's actually awesome because like the contrast is really weird, but in a way it works. I'm anticipating when these animatronics are going to show up, but I'm also more scared when they do finally show up. And that's a nice feeling. I think maybe that might have been a detail they did on purpose. Like when you go into settings, they'll have a hospital, there's the pizzeria. All these settings have such a different feel, and when you see these animatronics like show up into these different areas, such as like the pizzeria or outside, it just brings such a new, fresh feel, and it's really nice, and just it kind of cleanses the palette after a bunch of honestly pretty meh looking boring art. So overall, the art's good, it gets the point across. I just think maybe they could have done a bit better with the humans, and as for visualization of the book, which I've only read a little bit of the actual book, visualization, it's not quite as scary as I expected it to be, but it's still pretty nice to have, to be able to look at it and be like, oh, so this is what I was supposed to think. Overall, the art's pretty good, and now I think it's time that we move into a review of the story. What really happened to Charlie? It's the question that John can't seem to shake, along with the nightmares of Charlie's seeming death and miraculous reappearance. John just wants to forget the whole terrifying saga of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, but the past isn't so easily buried. Meanwhile, there's a new animatronic pizzeria opening in Hurricane, along with a new rash of kidnappings that feel all too familiar. Bound together by their childhood loss, John reluctantly teams up with Jessica, Marla, and Carlton to solve the case and find the missing children. Along the way, they'll unravel the twisted mystery of what really happened to Charlie and the haunted legacy of her father's creation. What you just heard was what you would read on the back to see the plot synopsis of this story. And I'd like to start, before I get into reviewing the story, I'd like to say I have not actually read the first two books. Around the time of receiving this book, which I did receive it as a gift from somebody very important to me, I did not have the books available. Now I currently do, and I am in the middle of reading The Silver Eyes. So this book, it starts off very interestingly. It starts off setting up the mystery of, what happened to Charlie, because Charlie supposedly died in the last book. We're told that in the very beginning, which is good, because where I hadn't read it, I would have been super confused. And there's a bit of drama, like the characters, they really have to like find a way where they can disagree on this without being hurtful towards each other. For example, Jessica, in one segment of this comic, she seems to believe that, it's really hurting Charlie that John will not believe that if this is the real Charlie, but he's traumatized, so she doesn't want to hurt him, but she doesn't know what to do to get him to finally see this. The story goes on for a while, and it leads into a big conclusion that I find really interesting, but I think we save that for later. And with the arrival of a new pizza place, it obviously fucks with John, and it even fucks with another character, but some of them just don't seem to care, which I think is a bit uncharacteristic considering what they've been through, and it doesn't really stick with me right, It's just not a very smart decision for the book. But still, the way they play it out is interesting, especially John's paranoia about the situation. And I couldn't get myself to put this book down. I read this in one class period. One class period, that was it. And I had finished this book. It's just that good. The story, everything comes full circle. It doesn't forget where it came from. It doesn't forget its past, like the past two books. It realigned itself with it perfectly, and it just creates this perfect story. And I don't know how to explain it, but I love it. I love when a story does that. I love when a story can start from beginning to end, have you hooked, and solve all these different mysteries, set up all these different things, and it pays off. It really pays off. For example, there's this segment where they have Theodore, which is a little rabbit animatronic that used to belong to Charlie. He says Shining Star Silver Reef. And later on, that leads to something very important, which is how he actually finds Charlie. And I know I've spoiled a lot, but hear me out. That leads into one of the best segments of this entire book. There's a dialogue segment, a really interesting dialogue segment, where Circus Baby is telling her story with this big twist about her and Charlie and their relations. It's honestly too good for me to just tell you here, so you're gonna have to figure that out on your own later. But it all goes so well. The only complaint I could possibly have is that sometimes the characters don't hold each other to the standard that I would expect them to. Sometimes the characters just let things go off for the sake of the story going on. Because the pacing is a bit wonky. I think maybe the pacing is a bit too fast because it's trying to rush through the events of the book without giving them much attention, such as what the book did. But other than pacing issues, it's a really well-written book with good dialogue and fairly interesting characters. I think the story is this book's strong suit, and that makes me excited to read the actual book when I come around to it. As for characters, there's not much I could say that you wouldn't expect. They all have their basic characters, their basic character work down. It all works, and the way they interact with each other, it all makes sense. And although I would say some characters do feel a lot different. Marla is way less childish, but that's brought up in the book. After the event, she had to grow up, and so did everyone else, and I think that was an interesting idea that they put into there. And it really put how everything affected them into perspective. And even then, you could tell they were still there. They were still all them. It was really nice. I enjoyed it. And the animatronics, they even had quite a bit more character than I would have thought, actually. Some of them, at least. And overall, all the characters were really well done, but I will say there were some standouts. Henry was an amazingly written character. along with William, who was really interesting to learn about for the tiny few bits we did see him. I would say overall the best character was Charlie, but I don't want to go too far into like best characters. I just like to say the character work here is good, but it could be a bit stronger because some of the characters feel more like archetypes than actual people. I can't lie, but that's few and far between. It happens very rarely. Overall, the characters they're really good, and another great part of this honestly awesome book. So, to conclude with it all, I'd say that this book isn't perfect, but it's really good. And I'd say if you're a new fan, it's a great entry point for the series. And as an old fan, it could still be pretty entertaining, though not useful if you're a lore junkie. You know, I'd definitely pick up this book. And if I had to give it a number rating, I would say around a 7 out of 10. It's really pretty good. Um, this is a new type of video for me, and I'm wondering what people think about it. I'm actually experimenting. There are going to be multiple different types of videos, and I'm just seeing what works. So, with all that said, get this book, or at least try to read it somehow, and thanks for watching.